folks, Hiawatha Pete here, and we are at the Base Borden Military Museum at Canadian Forces Base Borden, and today we are going to do a walk-around video of the Sherman Firefly Mark IIc. The Sherman Firefly was an upgun variant of the standard Sherman tank introduced in the second half of World War II and armed with the long-barreled, hard-hitting 17-pounder cannon, and was used to counter the heavy German tanks then being introduced. The Sherman Firefly on display here at the Base Borden Military Museum was converted from an M4A1 Sherman tank with a rounded cast steel hull, and this vehicle is a one-of-a-kind prototype vehicle used for training and testing purposes by Canadian forces in World War II. As I mentioned, this vehicle is a one-of-a-kind prototype vehicle used for training and testing purposes and differs from the standard production Sherman Firefly variants in a number of ways. To help illustrate some of the differences between the prototype Sherman Firefly Mark IIc here at Base Borden and the actual production, some of the actual production variants of the Sherman Firefly, I brought along a radio control model that I've built of a Sherman Mark IC Firefly. As you can see in this view, my model of the Sherman Mark IC has a sharply angled welded steel hull, whereas the prototype Sherman Mark IIc on display here at Base Borden has a rounded cast steel hull. The Sherman Firefly was used by the British, Canadian, and other Commonwealth forces in World War II. And in the British nomenclature, a Sherman Firefly Mark IIc denoted a Firefly vehicle based on the cast hull M4A1 Sherman. A Sherman Mark IC denotes a Firefly based on the standard M4 Sherman with a welded hull. Looking at the left side of the hull, we can see an applique armor plate has been added to the forward portion of the hull. As well, we can see the turret on this vehicle has the pistol port at the rear of the turret. Also, this vehicle has the vertical volute suspension system that basically all Sherman Fireflies have. It's interesting to note that the Sherman Mark IIc here at Base Borden is one of only two remaining Fireflies preserved in North America, the other one being at the U.S. Armor Museum in Fort Benning, Georgia. Of the two remaining Fireflies preserved in North America, only the one here at Base Borden can be considered a true Sherman Firefly in that it has the correct internal ammunition stowage modifications. The Sherman Firefly that's on display in Fort Benning, Georgia is simply a Sherman Firefly turret that has been mounted on an M4A2 Sherman hull, but without the necessary internal modifications that make it a true Sherman Firefly. Going around to the front of the vehicle, we can see the mantlet, the Sherman Firefly type gun mantlet, and we can see the bulges at the front of the hull for the driver's and machine gunner's position. Because this is a Sherman Firefly, the machine gunner's position has been removed, and the space inside the vehicle has been dedicated to holding extra ammunition racks. Here at the front of the vehicle is an information plaque about this particular Firefly, and it reads Sherman Mark IIc Firefly medium tank. The Sherman Firefly was a World War II British and Canadian variation of the American Sherman tank, fitted with the powerful British 17-pounder anti-tank gun as its main weapon. Originally conceived as a stopgap tank until future British tank designs armed with 17-pounder came into service, the Sherman Firefly became the most common vehicle to be used with the 17-pounder as its main armament in World War II. This model was operated by the Canadians with a crew of 4. It weighs 35 tons and has a top speed of 20 miles per hour. It features a 76mm main gun and 2 machine guns. Also of note is the fact that this vehicle has the 3-piece transmission cover, which is not found on the Sherman Mark Ic production variants. Comparing the front of the vehicle, you can see the rounded bulges for the driver and bow gunner's hatches on the Sherman Mark IIc, and they contrast with the sharp angled hatches on the welded hull production Sherman Mark Ic, which is represented by my model. Also of note is that the vehicle at the Base Borden Military Museum has been named after Commander Radley Walters, who was a Canadian tank commander in the Second World War and was the highest scoring Allied tank ace in the Second World War, having destroyed no fewer than 18 German armored vehicles. Looking at the right hand side of the vehicle, we can see it has 2 applique armor plates fitted to the forward and rear sections of the hull. Also, it is interesting to note that the M4A1 Sherman variant was known as the Grizzly in Canada. The side view also shows us an excellent profile of the ordnance quick-firing 17-pounder gun used by the Sherman Firefly. The Sherman Mark IIc Firefly on display here at the Base Borden Military Museum is equipped with an American-style all-round vision commander's hatch. You can contrast that with the British-style all-round vision commander's hatch, which I have attempted to represent on my model of the Sherman Mark Ic. The most common variant of Sherman Firefly hatch was the early version split commander's hatch, and this is the hatch that was used on the majority of production Sherman Fireflies. Again, we have another view of the vertical volute suspension system used on all production Sherman Fireflies, as well as this particular prototype Sherman Firefly Mark IIc. All Sherman Firefly variants are equipped with an armored radio box at the rear of the turret bustle, and that is because the size and space required by the recoil of the 17-pounder gun was so large that they had to move the radio out of the turret and into this armored box, because after they had fitted the 17-pounder gun, there was no room for the radio in the turret. So that's the reason for having this extra armored box that was welded on to the rear of the Sherman Firefly turret. Coming around to the rear of the vehicle, you can see the cutout on the rear of the hull that was common to both the production Sherman 1C variant as well as the Sherman Mark IIc prototype shown here. We can also see the M4 Sherman style engine deck common to both the Sherman Mark IIc Firefly as well as the Mark IC production Firefly, represented by my radio control model. Looking at the rear of the hull, we can see the two round air filters common to both the Sherman Mark IIc Firefly prototype as well as they were also used on the Sherman Mark IC production variant. We can also see the engine access hatch. Well, that about wraps it up, folks. I hope you enjoyed this walk around video of the prototype Sherman Mark IIc Firefly here at Base Borden, as well as the comparison to my radio control model of the production Sherman Mark IC Firefly. That concludes this video. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching.